A third of the most popular children's toys this year in the United States, and the vast majority of them, of course, manufactured outside the United States, because we don't make anything in this country anymore now that we've turned our trade policy over to transnational corporations. A third of the most popular children's toys in the United States this year contain harmful chemicals, including lead, cadmium, arsenic, and mercury. Consumers Group, the Ecology Center, tested nearly 700 toys ahead of the holiday season and found 32% of them contain one or more of this chemical, 7% containing more than 40 parts per million of lead, 3% containing more than 300 parts per million of lead. Among the toys of detectable lead levels, the Barbie Bike Flare accessory kit, the Dora the Explorer activity tote, a kid's poncho sold by Walmart stores. They also found cadmium levels higher than 100 parts per million in 3.3%, or 22 of the products tested, and arsenic levels over 100 parts per million in 9 of the toys, 1.3%. 42% of the toys tested contained PVC, which contains additives dangerous to human health, according to their study. 1/4 of all pet products contain detectable levels of lead. 64% of women's handbags contain lead over 300 parts per million. I mean, what is going on? Why are we letting American, many of them are not even American corporations. They're transnational corporations that have incorporated outside the United States to avoid paying taxes. Why are we letting these transnational corporations poison our children for Christmas and Hanukkah, for the holiday season this year? With us, Yaron Brook, the president and executive director of the Ayn Rand Institute, AYNRAND.org, carrying the flame of objectivism and free market capitalism. Yaron, welcome back to our program.
Thanks for having me on, Thom.
How can you justify this?
Well, I mean, I'm not sure what to justify here. I don't think there's a conspiracy by the major corporations of the world to kill our children, or by the Chinese to kill our children. If those levels are truly harmful, if damage to kids could be proved, then they should take and be off the market. You shouldn't be able to sell products as children toys that are poisonous and disastrous. But the fact is that these levels are probably so minute that the risk is negligible if it exists at all.
40 parts per million is the highest level that the American Academy of Pediatrics says is acceptable, and 300 parts per million is substantially higher than that.
And I think it's wonderful that these guys are testing it. I think make this public information. No parent wants to buy a toy for their kids that is going to harm that kid. Splash this news everywhere you can and boycott those products. I think the marketplace works. If you provide information, people will respond to that information, and manufacturers will have to change if these things are really harmful, if this is really bad, then
so you're saying these toys shouldn't be sold.
Marketplace works again.
Are you suggesting then that government should step in and say, if these toys contain these chemicals, then you cannot sell them?
I'm suggesting that if you could prove that these are harmful products that are being sold under the guise of toys and stuff, yes, the courts and the government have a role to play in protecting us from fraud and from poisoning. Nobody has a right to poison us, but you have to be clear about what an objective proof and real harm is, and I think we've lost that perception. We today won't accept any risk. We try to live a zero-risk life, and a zero-risk life means
300 parts per million lead is not zero risk.
Well, I don't know. I'm not a scientist. I can't argue one way or the other. Again, if it is truly harmful to people, if that can be shown in the clinic or however they do this kind of research, if it can be shown, then first of all, provide the information. Because
you're calling for the Consumer Protection Agency to protect our children from these toys. This is 180 degrees from a conversation you and I had a year ago at this time.
I think this is easy. That is, I think our court systems take care of this. As I've always claimed, if products are viewed to be harmful, then a lawsuit will happen very quickly. And I don't believe in the precautionary principle. I don't believe in it. I believe that you provide people with information, and there are plenty of consumer groups to do that, and then you let the court system take its course. And the court system, first of all, the marketplace will not allow really harmful products out there, because once people get the information, they won't buy the products. And secondly, if people do get harmed, they will sue these companies, and companies will go out of business, and they'll disappear.
You're suggesting that we should all become scientists so we can protect ourselves? Or
No.
I mean, who's going...
Who just did it? Who just did it? Was this a government agency that provided this data?
No, it was
this
not.
Was a private agency provided this data.
The Ecology Center out of Michigan.
Yeah, I'm suggesting that in capitalism, when you get rid of the government protecting our life, when you get rid of paternalism, when you get rid of the idea,
then what you end up with is these chemicals in the toys.
What you end up with, no. This is a.
Well, that's what we have right now.
We have a consumer products agency right now, and we have poison in toys. The solution is there's too much government. There's too much government.
No, it's
That's
the opposite.
Problem.
The Consumer Products Protection Agency was eviscerated under the Dan Quayle's Competitiveness Council.
Come on, the problem today is that Americans live their lives thinking that the government is going to save them from all harm, and we've shut off our minds, and we don't want to think. And we don't want to make choices of our own. We take the mortgages that the government tells us to, and we get messed up. The larger issue is this.
The larger issue is that the reason why these chemicals are in these toys is because it is cheaper to manufacture things in countries where these chemicals are even allowed in the factory. You would not find cadmium, you would not find lead even allowed in a factory in the United States, and that's the reason why these toy manufacturers are going offshore. It's not the cheap labor. The cheap labor is a nice bonus, but it's pretty much compensated for by the cost of shipping. The real discount that they get, the real cheap stuff, is the fact that they're no longer having to cover the cost of externalities. In other words, they no longer have to make sure that the local community isn't damaged by these poisons. Think Bhopal. They no longer have to be concerned with the fact that these poisons.
Bhopal was a government project. Government regulators approved every aspect of Bhopal. It was a product of Indian corruption. Bhopal would have never happened in a truly capitalist country where companies were actually liable for what they did. It was all politics.
Bhopal did happen because the government of India was trying to be capitalist.
No,
they were taking a hands-off approach.
Well, wait. This is the way pre-capitalist era in India. This is on the industrial policy under socialist Indian government, where the Indian government, dictated exactly how that plant would be manufactured. This would never happen in India today. We're in a capitalist India.
Give me an example then of one true objectivist, libertarian, whatever you want to call it, capitalist government where this is actually working.
Well, we don't have one, but then again...
Not one in the world.
Not one in the world, but then again, we didn't have an America before America was founded. That is, the fact that it doesn't exist doesn't mean it shouldn't, and it doesn't mean it won't one day.
So if we were to... So we could create this in the United States if we got rid of all the consumer protection agencies and simply turn it over to the courts and let individuals sue when their children are poisoned by manufacturers in China.
And what would happen, Tom? I mean, you know this very well. What would happen is that private agencies would arise who would test these products just like they do right now and provide valuable information to consumers, and consumers for the first time in a long time would take personal responsibility over the products that they buy and do a little bit of research.
Somebody's going to have to say this is what constitutes a harm.
All they have to do is go to the Consumer Report website and see, this is a toy I shouldn't buy because it's harmful for my kids.
So you're saying the court system is where we should put everything. Course, it should all be in the court system.
And of course,
forget about the legislative branch, the executive branch, just the judicial branch.
If somebody is
and what happens if Scalia or a court says, nah, we kind of like things. We don't care if you're poisoned.
I've said this before. Well, in the objectivist world, they wouldn't say that, but I've said this before. If a product is clearly shown to be harming people, then it's committing fraud, because that's not the purpose for which it was sold, and it would be taken off the market.
Yeah.
But you don't need a huge government bureaucracy for that. The market takes care of these things very well when it's allowed.
Except that it doesn't anywhere in the world.
Because we don't have a market today.
Yaron Brook, AyanRand.org. Thanks, Yaron.